So now that you know how to use a repository for your students' projects, and you know all about the world of network activity, and you really are excited to use GitHub in your classroom, now how do you manage all of those student repositories? Well, GitHub Classroom is a product that helps you get up and running with real-world tools in Snap. We developed it when we got feedback from teachers that they wanted a way to distribute starter code, manage exercises, and get deeper insight into student work. And this is what the experience is like for a student in GitHub Classroom. They accept an invitation from an invitation link that you distribute to them, and what's happening is that a copy of the repository is being generated for them that's associated with your course organization and with them as a student. And you can see that now they've got the directions and some starter code and they're ready to go. So here's how it works in practice. Say Dr. Root, who uses GitHub Classroom because she has 50 students, and with one repository per assignment, that can add up to a lot of repositories to manually set up, and that would be a really big pain. But with GitHub Classroom, she posts the assignment link that GitHub Classroom generates, and then she posts that either to her learning management system or her course webpage, or maybe she distributes it via email. And then each of these students have their own public or private repository with all of her assignment materials in it. And one key benefit of using GitHub to give feedback is that she can, from her teacher dashboard, she can click on the repository the student submits and give them feedback in line exactly where they get stuck. She can have more insight into their work. And this is an example from an instructor from Loyola Marymount University. And on the left is how he used to give feedback to his students. And on the right is how he's able to give feedback to his students using GitHub. And Dr. Root can get to this point using GitHub Classroom and clicking through to a student repository. So the first exercise from this section is a reflection one. How do you think you might use this tool for your courses? How would you distribute starter code? What would be in the starter code? What does this tool make possible? And I'm going to ask you to post that to the forums. All right, so next up, we're actually going to set up a real live classroom for ourselves. And in order to get started doing that, I think it's important to understand the different levels of permissions and how accounts work on github.com. Everyone who logs into GitHub has an individual user account, and that's their GitHub handle, and it can be seen by anyone. Each user can have both public and private repositories. Organizations are another type of account on GitHub. An organization is made up of one or more users and can also own both public and private repositories. Everyone in an organization will have a certain level of access to all of that organization's repositories, ranging from read access to owner. And let's talk about those permission levels. An owner has the highest level of access and can even delete repositories. And administrators are able to change important settings in a repository and can even delete repositories. And administrators are able to change important settings in a repository. Usually, teachers or TAs are added to repositories as administrators. And then collaborators have access to change the code, but their access is limited. Students will have write access to their repositories through Classroom automatically. And public access refers to a public repository. Anyone can see the code, but of course, we offer private repositories for teachers and students. And then a quick bit of setup math. The recommended workflow here is that you have one organization per course per semester, and that inside that organization, you have one repository per student per assignment. And of course, those organizations and repositories are free, private repositories are free through the teacher discount in GitHub Education. So we're going to go through the steps to set up a classroom. We're going to set up the Campus Advisors classroom. And what we're going to do first is on github.com, we're going to create an organization, make some repositories with assignment materials in that organization. And then we're going to hop on over to classroom.github.com. And since Classroom is an application, we need to authorize that application for our organization. And from there, we're going to upload a roster of student identifiers. Okay, so I'm on github.com and I'm going to press this white plus sign over here and create a new organization. And this is important stuff because it involves money. So we're going to name our organization Campus Advisors. And the billing email will be my email. And this is very important. So I want you to check the free box. And then that account will eventually be upgraded. And I want you to choose the free plan, which eventually you'll have access to unlimited private repositories as a teacher. You don't need to click that box. You can just press this big green button to create the organization. And the next step in creating an organization is to invite members to it. And this would be a good time if you have co-teachers or TAs to invite them to collaborate with you. All right, so we got Campus Advisors, but we don't have any repositories in there. So let's create a new repository for this section that we're working on right now, network activity. All right, so let's call this Module 2, Network Activity. And the description will be individual assignments for Campus Advisors. Great. Again, public or private. Let's choose public for now. You can get it upgraded to private later. And let's go ahead and initialize this repository with a README. So it'll be a nice markdown file for us to write in. And then let's create the repository. Great. So now in our Campus Advisors organization, we now have a repository that we're going to use to distribute assignments for Module 2, Network Activity. And let's just go ahead and directly edit that README. Fetch, we did push, we did remotes, we did branches, and then we did permissions, and finally we're doing managing student repositories. Great, I will go ahead and commit that. Excellent, so now we have our Campus Advisors organization and our repository with an assignment in it that we're going to connect to GitHub Classroom so that we can distribute it to students. So now I'm going to pop over to classroom.github.com and I'm going to sign in. And I'm going to create a new classroom, brand new. But I don't see the organization that I just made listed. So I'm going to grant access to it. I said Campus Advisors right here. So I'm going to grant access to that organization to use that application. And when I reload the page, there it is, Campus Advisors. It's a pretty descriptive name already, so I'm going to stick with it. This is where you would again invite other administrators if you wanted to have co-teachers or TAs. Next, we have the opportunity to create a student roster. And we definitely want students to feel a sense of ownership over their profiles and put, a splash of personality on them, and for them to be able to make a portfolio of work that they can show industry. So it's really important that they own that piece. But at the same time, teachers have told me, you know what, I don't know if Joey Ramone 825 is Chris Allen, and I don't know if like Screechy Weasel Fuzzy is Melinda Smith. So we made this way where you can upload a roster of student identifiers. You can use emails or student IDs, any kind of unique information, and we can link that up with GitHub accounts. So I'm going to use emails, and I have these emails that I have generated from my students. You can also upload a CSV file too if you'd like. All right, so we have a classroom and we have a roster and we can manage it here. So if in the future we want to add additional students, if students join the class or remove them, we can manage our roster there. But now we're going to create our first assignment. And to create an assignment, we're going to make an assignment on Classroom. We're going to bring in some starter code from the repository that we just made. We'll set a due date and distribute the assignment link to our students via an LMS or email or however you communicate with your students. All right, let's create our first assignment. We're going to create an individual assignment for now. Let's call it Module 2, Network Activity. Again, we're going to keep it public for now. I'm not going to give students admin permissions on their repository just yet, but this is where we can import code from any repository that we have access to and use it as an assignment to distribute to students. So say if you really like the sample code from CS50 or some other MOOC or another teacher and you have access to their code, you can import it here and distribute to students. So I'm going to say that campus advisors, we had that organization and we made a module for network activity. So we found that. And then next, let's give it a deadline. And while this doesn't actually email the student, when you check in on your teacher dashboard, you can see how many commits they've made. So it's a way for you to keep track on whether or not they're working. All right, let's create the assignment. Wonderful. This is the invitation link that's generated that you would distribute to your students. And you can see that the teacher dashboard lets me know if they've accepted the assignment yet. But since they haven't accepted the assignment, let's take a look at another classroom with active students. Okay, so now you can see that there's one student with a linked GitHub account, and there are many other students with unlinked GitHub accounts, which means that I haven't associated them with an email address or a student identifier. But from here, I can actually click through directly to their repository that they're working on. So it's a good way to keep all the student repositories organized. And I can see if they've made commits. So I've seen that Mike McQuaid has made 0 commits, but Ms. One Merchant has made 18. So the next few exercises are going to be about working with repositories, working with student repositories. And first up, I'm going to ask you to sort of think through your workflow. You thought about how to use Classroom in your course. Now, are you going to keep all of your course materials in a repository? Or are you just going to keep the assignments that students need to complete there? When will you expect students to commit? What sort of commit messages should they use? How should they communicate with the wider world? And when do you want students to push their code to GitHub? Do you want to see it as they go? Or are you really happy with just seeing the final product when they're complete? And then the next assignment is about distributing assignments. And I'm going to ask you to create a classroom of your very own. So the steps to that are to create an organization with a repository in it. And in that repository, I would like you to put in your first week's assignments for the course that you teach. And then I'm going to ask you to go to classroom.github.com and create an individual assignment. Using the invitation link, send it to a colleague to test it out, and then take a snapshot of your teacher dashboard and post it to the forums.